Today I'll be making the classic dish, the French dish steak au poivre, but instead of steak we'll be using duck, and here in the U.S. is referred to as black pepper steak. And so to get started, you're going to need your duck breast. The ones that I used, took out of the freezer today and brined them for a couple hours just to get some of the blood out of them. You're going to need a couple tablespoons of unsalted butter. I also use a couple tablespoons of bacon grease in this recipe, a little bit of touch I had on it. And then I had about 2 shallots that I minced up, about half a cup of beef stock, and about half a cup of brandy, and about half a cup of heavy whipping cream. You're also going to want to have some capers. The recipe I was reading called for green peppercorns, but I like capers better, so I did that. And then also some crushed black pepper as well. So we have our first step. I've got some butter in the skillet with a little bit of bacon grease that I cooked this morning. And all we're doing now is browning our duck meat. I've got a little bit of salt on them, not much, because that bacon grease is going to have some salt in it already. That'll be good. And we're just cooking this until it's medium rare on the inside, but not very long. This is really the only cooking of the duck that we're doing for this meal. The rest of the preparation is going to be into going to make the sauce. So we'll come back once this duck is cooked here a little bit for a couple minutes. So I've got the pan on high heat here. And you want to cook them until they're medium rare, a couple minutes on each side, as I said. And this duck I did brine for about 2 hours before putting it in. So just put it in some salt water to kind of get a little bit of that blood out of there before I cooked it. So we're about to get these things turned over and pulled off the pan. Okay, so I've got some of that butter and bacon grease still in my pan. I've pulled off my ducks, letting them rest a little bit. It'll be about a medium rare. And now we're gonna add in these shallots. Okay, so we've got the shallots in. We're just gonna kind of brown them for a minute or two until they get some color in them. Kind of looking at the amount of grease we have. Might put a little bit more bacon grease in here in a second. A lot of it's kind of steamed off since I started. Yes, this is where the process of the sauce begins. Gonna make it with a little bit more butter for my shallots. They're looking good now. Now we're gonna pour in about a half a cup of beef stock. I'm just kind of eyeballing it here as I go. And then we're also gonna put in some of this pepper at this point and let that cook down for a little. We've got the beef broth in there, and I'm gonna boil that down until about half of that beef broth renders out. And then the next step for the sauce will come in. Okay, I've got it cooked down to where I want it, and I'm gonna put in about a half a cup of this brandy. And now I'm just gonna let that boil for another 2 or 4 minutes until it thickens up a little bit more. At this point, I'm gonna add in a couple of these capers, which I came up with on my own. Put a couple in there. I'm gonna smash them out with a fork to try to separate them out. Okay, I've got it looking about like this, and I'm gonna slowly mix in about a quarter cup of this cream. And I've got the heat off at this point when I put the cream in. So we'll see what it looks like here in a second. I've got my cream in, and heat's off. I'll wait for it to stop bubbling. I add in about another tablespoon and a half of butter, about 3/4 a tablespoon at a time. Okay, so our sauce is done. The heat's off. Now it's time to cut up our meat that's been resting, and we will combine the two. I have the duck meat cut up. It looks beautiful, a perfect medium to medium rare. And we've got our sauce, and now it's time to marry the two together. And so, how does me preparing duck relate to our class? Well, obviously, waterfowl is very important to you, and it's important in this class because that was the very first group of species that we covered. And so my goal of doing this dish was I'm going to bring it in tomorrow for class. And I just want people that don't hunt and aren't our majors to see that not only do we go out there and shoot animals, but we also bring them home, prepare them, and have something to show for our efforts out there, and that it's not all about just the hunt. The hunt kind of continues throughout the rest of the year, as we did today, like I pulled the ducks out of the freezer. It's a gift that never gives up giving. And so I just wanted to bring awareness to that. I feel like there is a gap in the amount of people that you would expect in R&R at LSU to be hunters. There's definitely less than I had thought. And so just to kind of normalize the hunting and the eating the game for the people who have never really been around that, and show them that it's a good thing, and that it also can taste very good with a little bit of practice. The ultimate goal of bringing people into the hunting world is one, because it's a great experience that everyone should be able to enjoy. But two, the more people that are involved in the hunting industry, the more money goes towards the animals that are being hunted, especially waterfowl hunters. As you know, as well as I do, DU is a great example of that, especially with just the more people you get involved, the more money goes to help raising money and funds for these ducks to conserve them and manage them throughout the entire continent. And so ultimately, the more people we can get involved, the better off waterfowl species will be as a whole, which I feel like a lot of people don't really understand, because I think there's more hunters that would be a bad thing, but it's really not a bad thing, because it's just more money that can go into these different species to help them out, and just to have a resource. And especially here in Louisiana, it's such a big public resource that we can all just share and love, and take a bond in that together and enjoy that together, and have a common goal of saving different species and different populations of animals.